Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait 1 minute for folks to join, but as we wait, do feel free to drop your location in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. Okay, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our product webinar. We're very excited today to introduce you to Poppulo AI, our intelligent personal assistant built for employee communications. My name is Heather Bicknell. I'm a product marketing director at Poppulo, and my focus is really launching new products and features that help communicators drive greater impact for their organizations. And I also have a degree in English and creative writing, so I'm really personally fascinated by generative AI and what it means for the future of writing. And Katrina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. Hi, everyone. My name is Katrina. Pronunciation usually trips people up, so it's Katrina. I'm a senior product manager and business owner in Poppulo. So I'm responsible for our communicate work stream, all of the tools and assets that a communicator would need to successfully use Poppulo. So definitely around the generative AI side is one of the areas we've had a key focus on this year in looking at communicator efficiencies and productivity gains for our customers. So I'm thrilled to be here today to cover the product demo.
Perfect. And later on, you'll also hear from Jared Curtis, Senior Director of Corporate Communications at Maximus. Unfortunately, Jared needed to be traveling today, so he couldn't join us live, but he is an avid early adopter of AI for communications. So we've recorded a Q&A with him to learn all about his insights on how he's implemented AI with his team and the impact it's had on his organization. So you'll definitely want to stick around to hear from Jared on what they're doing over there at Maximus. So before we get into the main content today, just a couple housekeeping notes. We're currently on the Zoom platform, so you should see a chat functionality and a Q&A functionality. So feel free to use the chat for any comments or thoughts that you have throughout the presentation. Share your perspectives. We always love to see that. And then use the Q&A box if you do have any questions. That will help us answer those throughout the conversation and make sure they don't get lost in the chat. We'll also save time at the end to answer as many as we can, but we'll make sure to follow up afterward on any questions we don't get to today. And after the webinar ends, we'll also send out a recording to all attendees. So the session is being recorded and you will get a recording in your email inbox. And then one last thing to point out is we have turned on auto-generated closed captions today. If you'd like to adjust those at all, you can do so using the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. So what are we talking about today? So we'll start off with a brief overview on the state of AI for employee communications. Then we'll talk about what exactly Poppulo AI is and how it helps you save time and increase engagement. You'll also be among the first to see a live demo of some key Poppulo AI features. And then last but not least, we'll hear from Jared at Maximus before we turn it over to Q&A. All right, so AI has been inescapable this year. I'm sure you feel that. There's been a ton of noise around what generative AI in particular means for the future of work. And you've probably heard of tools like ChatGPT for text generation, tools like Midjourney for creating really wild, hyper-realistic imagery. So what does this explosion of technology mean exactly for the internal communications profession? If we think about AI robots, they can copyright, they can Photoshop, they can even generate videos, and the time it takes us to open a Microsoft Word document, is this beginning of the end of the comms profession. So we certainly don't think so. Still, it's apparent that all knowledge workers will need to learn to adapt to the AI wave, and that there's a huge opportunity to speed up production, which will hopefully mean we can spend more time on the things that we're not able to get to today as much, like measurement and strategy. And we do know that many internal communicators are actually already using this technology in some capacity. So this poll comes from our last AI webinar that we held in September. We asked the audience whether they've been using AI for content development in the last 6 months. Surprisingly, 50% said yes. However, we know many barriers still exist that prevent communicators from being able to implement AI at work. Okay, so when communicators are using generative AI, how are we using it, right? And this data actually comes from research by North Star Communications. So we hosted Mark Dollins, president of North Star Communications, on our last AI webinar in September. It was a really great and insightful presentation. So if you weren't able to catch that one, you can watch it on the Poppulo.com website, and highly recommend going back and looking at Mark's research there. We're going to share a link in the chat as well, I believe, to the PDF that this research comes from. But for this question, communicators could pick as many responses as apply to their organization. So you can see that content generation and executive summaries really led the pack in terms of how we're using generative AI, and then other content areas like cover notes, Q&As, discussion guides, things like video script were kind of the next up. So we do have a second poll here today. Let's see if second time is the charm here. There we go. So where do you see AI being the most useful for content generation? And you can choose as many as apply here. So things like generating ideas and topics, really getting that brainstorming started, maybe writing a first draft, kind of pushing through writer's block. You know, we all have those days. Editing, so whether that's your own first draft or taking content from another department, or maybe notes from your CEO, and editing for things like tone, clarity, length, adapting to different channels, things like that. Could be creating engaging titles. Often that's sort of the last thing standing between us and pressing publish. So that can be a blocker there. Perhaps image generation. Maybe you're lacking a really nice image library, or can't always find the perfect image, or maybe you have other ways that we haven't captured here. Do feel free to drop any of those in the chat as well. I'd love to hear how you're thinking about using AI for content today. And we'll just give that a couple seconds to run. Okay, great. So it looks like first drafts, that pushing through that writer's block, is certainly a top way that communicators are you all using AI today. Topics and ideas, so that brainstorming piece coming in next, and then editing being the third most, or actually titles being the third most there. Really interesting stuff, but it looks like kind of, you know, somewhat across the board, although definitely that writer's block piece being probably a key thing to overcome with AI there. So thank you all for sharing that. Really interesting to hear kind of exactly what ways we're finding useful for creating content today. And then at our last webinar, we also asked the audience where they think AI has the potential to create the most value for employee comms over the next year. So a slightly different question, a little bit more forward-looking. And interestingly, in addition to content generation, content delivery was the kind of identified as the next value driver for guiding which channels maybe to use to optimize engagement and when to publish communications, things like that. And then interestingly, driving employee experience was also a top choice there. So that indicates some recognition that AI is not just for the communicator experience, but it can also help our audiences as well. And then one last look at some stats before we take a look at AI and Poppulo. So it's really, you know, when you think about it, not that surprising that time-consuming tasks like writing are at the top of the list for how we want to use AI. There was a finding that in this year's Gallagher State of the Sector report that the #1 challenge among communicators is a lack of time and capacity in their teams. So really, in addition to things like advocating for additional resources and staffing, we're looking to technology to help address this challenge. And there's this fascinating finding from Forrester, which is that generative AI can save 2.5 hours of every 8-hour workday when used most of the time. So that's additional 12.5 hours every week of time back. And that study was done with a mix of job roles, not just content heavy roles like internal communication. But even if you think that seems like a little high, I don't know if it would save me that much time per day. You can consider that even if you save 2.5 hours over the course of a week, that's an extra 120 hours a year or an extra 3 working weeks. So there's definitely a huge potential here with generative AI in particular to help us address the the top challenge among comms teams today. So how are we at Poppulo as developers of employee communication software thinking about AI in our tools? So very quick, brief background on Poppulo. We provide communication software for over 4,500 organizations, including 47 of the Fortune 100. And our enterprise platform, Poppulo Harmony, supports both organizational communications as well as operational use cases. And with Poppulo Harmony, you can create, publish, and measure communications across channels from one centralized platform underpinned by enterprise-grade governance and security. So across some of the channels you see here today as well. And this year, we've added an additional intelligence layer to our platform with the launch of Poppulo AI. And this is really looking at how do we implement AI into our platform to really empower and assist communicators across 3 key areas. So one, really the main theme we've been touching on so far, which is creation. So content assistance, streamlining, writing, editing, and publishing. And we're going to look at a key feature of that today called AI Content Assist. And the next layer is recommendations. Those are personalized recommendations for communicators and employees alike. So far we offer automated translations, language translations that help enhance the employee experience. In the future, we plan to leverage more customized recommendations, actually based on historical employee behavioral data. So really using what we've learned in terms of, what creates the best engagement and things like content and formatting and providing those recommendations directly in the tool to improve content quality. And last but not least is insights. So that would be identifying things like content themes, analyzing content attributes to provide really intelligent insight into what's resonating with employees. And what's great about leveraging AI for this kind of capability is that, of course, with analytics, we ourselves can dig into the data and find patterns and insights, but AI can do that so much faster. So by using AI, in addition to the the rich analytics we're pulling from the system, you can really find totally different insights that you wouldn't be able to pull otherwise, unless you're spending really a lot of time doing that, and even then, probably not humanly possible. So exciting stuff there. And then finally, before I turn it over to Katrina to show you what this actually looks like live, I wanted to spend a brief moment just to highlight our AI principles, because these are really important to us at Poppulo for forming the foundation of our AI development. So we think about sort of these 3 key pillars as we're developing AI. One is responsible AI. So we've chosen the Microsoft OpenAI service for our generative capabilities, largely due to Microsoft's commitment to ensuring that its AI systems are developed responsibly. So this means principles that ensure fairness, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability, all of which are essential to preventing bias in AI systems. And that is a key thing we are looking at here as we develop on top of that service. Assistive AI. So we see AI as an assistant, and we believe that humans and AI working together is more powerful than either alone. And to that end, we're focused on building AI into our tools in ways that meaningfully enhance both the communicator and the employee experience, such as accelerating the creation of engaging content like you'll see today. And then finally, governance. So this is critical for scaling communications programs generally and for maintaining a consistent brand image message. And we see building AI directly into our tools as a way for customers to still benefit from that robust governance framework to provide consistent experience and standard versus, everyone sort of sourcing their own AI tools and being a little bit of the Wild West out there. So enabling a secure way, a governed way for everyone to be able to take advantage of AI. And with that, I will turn it over to Katrina for the demo. Oh, Katrina, you're on mute there.
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Here you go.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. So excited to be here demoing some of the AI assist features that we've released into Poppulo this year, all with a mission of bringing communicator efficiency and productivity gains for our customers. So Heather, you introed there in your slides, we've heard a lot about AI this year. We might have dabbled with ChatGPT or other AI tools, but we understand for some communicators, we need to see a demonstration of content generation or a practical application of AI in a business environment to understand what it might truly deliver or how it might be valuable for your business as an organization. So to get started with Poppulo AI, I'm within the multi-channel feeds area of Poppulo, and I'm just going to create a new post. And I would start by creating content as I typically would, or I'd import from an email article into my feed post. And inserting this body content will unlock the AI capabilities within the system. And so from here, I have the option to auto-generate an engaging post title for my communication. And similar for my push notifications. So to push a notification on our Poppulo mobile app, I can auto-generate a number of suggestions for the notification title or the description. And this can be time consuming, right? So coming up with highly engaging content titles or just different titles for similar messages that you need to communicate frequently. There's obviously time and effort involved in that, particularly if there are things like required character limits. So trying to make something engaging but stay below a certain restriction can be even more complicated. So they're really things we were looking at, just how can we understand the challenges that communicators currently have, and then how can we just take some of that lift off and assist and support them in the background to do their tasks more easily. One of the other areas that we're leveraging AI is to rewrite the body content itself. So can be helpful for things like overcoming writer's block, or if, possibly someone in the company might give you points and ask you to communicate on their behalf. So taking those points and just very quickly and easily constructing that into an internal message that you can publish. One of the key findings from the customer research that we did this year was it's, again, very time consuming to summarize longer form messages. So taking a comms that you might have published in email and then making that concise and summarizing so it can fit on another channel such as mobile or SharePoint or Teams. So with Poppulo AI, you can adjust the tone or the length of your message, and it will auto-generate a more succinct message for you to communicate. So you can adjust then and reformat the content as needed before publishing. So just a little bit about the technology we're using. We're leveraging Microsoft's OpenAI is the service that we're using. And one of the most common questions that I would get asked, understandably, is around privacy and security. So for any of the features that I'm showing today, we are not storing customer data anywhere in our service. So we're not storing information for training purposes for models. or there's no possible way that one customer's information can get used as an input or an output to construct the response that we see returned here. So really important to us, like given our customer base and the sensitivity of information in Poppulo, privacy and security is definitely at the forefront for what we're developing. So I would go through, once I'm happy and I publish this post, it would be shown to my employees on the Poppulo mobile app, on Microsoft SharePoint and Teams, and on digital screens around my office. So next, I would want to understand how's the performing. So the content performance, how's it resonating or landing with my employees? So I'm going to touch on our AI-powered content insight themes. And again, we know that, it can be time-consuming. There's obviously a lift on communicators to accurately track and measure the impact of their communications. And in Poppulo, we have campaign functionality. So this is really valuable for any really customized campaigns that you want to create and track against your business goals. So you can create a campaign, you can tag it to any piece of content that you're publishing in Poppulo, and then you can report on it through our campaigns reporting, which is fantastic, but it is manual to do that. So you have to create those campaigns and tag it to your content and then track it over time to understand the impact and how those campaigns are performing. So what we are, I suppose, really trying to do is look at how can we layer AI on top of our analytics. So some of the cool things we've been looking at is AI-powered content insight themes. And what that does is it will auto-analyze the feed content that you're creating, detect themes, and then tag them in the back end, so relative to the content that you're creating. And how it works, it's a machine learning based model. So our own machine learning model that our data science team create and curate. And then it is natural language processing running in the background. So again, as you create this content, it will detect those themes and tag the relevant communication to those themes. So no lift required from the communicator side. It's all kind of running in the background. So I'll just move to the insights. So what can you actually gain from what we're auto-analyzing there? And this is one of our 4 multi-channel dashboards within Poppulo at the moment. So the content insight themes dashboard. And what this will help me understand is what are those key cutting themes across my communications? What are we as an organization most frequently communicating about? And what are our employees most actively engaging with? What themes or topics are they most interested in? And then very importantly, are there gaps or silences that we should be concerned about? So are there things that I know we should be communicating about, but I'm not seeing that reflected within my communications? So here we're looking at the trend and volume of those posts and the themes that we're communicating about over time. And often this can be a gap. So we mightn't have that higher level view, across the whole organization outside of our centralized comms team as a company. Holistically, what are the most common themes that are represented in our content? The most commonly detected themes. So here at a glance, I can see, what are the volume of posts being sent out and what are the top kind of themes that we're communicating about. So here I can see we're obviously communicating a lot about training, development, and our people, which is fantastic. Less so around wellness, recognition, and awards. So this would be concerning to me. I know we have a real drive on at the moment to recognize our individuals and teams. So, I should take action here and communicate more around the area of recognition and awards. I can see the promotion. So which posts are we, or which themes in our posts are we most commonly pushing as a featured post? And then at a glance, is that accurate? Are we promoting and pushing the right themes? Should we be, focused in on other areas of promotion? and hear how's it resonating with my employees. So again, I can see we might be communicating very little around recognitions and awards, but when we do speak about this type of content, this theme is highly interacted with by my employees. So they like that content, they are commenting on posts that are related to this theme. So indicator for me that I should communicate about this more frequently in my communications. So just a very quick demo of some of the AI features that we're looking at through our content creation workflow and through our AI insights. Huge opportunity there, like definitely some exciting features to come in 2024 to continue on our AI enhancements. But before closing out the product demo today, I just wanted to touch on our auto language translation capabilities, just as it's a huge area of time saving for our communicators. In the post creation flow I just walked through, I'm obviously creating that content in my own native language in English, but I really want my employees to be able to read that in their own preferred language. I want the message to reach them in their own local dialect for increased employee engagement. So how we do that in Poppulo is through Amazon AWS Translate. And again, effortless for the communicator. You can publish the post once, and then the end employee can receive in their preferred language. So a very quick demo of how an employee within our Poppulo app would go in and just update their language settings. And then any content that I publish through our feed going forward is received in that local language. So as a communicator, just effortlessly helping me to increase engagement across that global workforce and drive adoption across any of the channels that we're using internally. So that is it. That concludes the product demo and some of the AI assistive features that we're working on. And next, we're going to hear from Jared in Maximus on how they're using AI as part of their comms program.
Katrina, for that excellent demo. Let me get the recording up here.
So this is really interesting hearing from Jared.
Let me know, Katrina, if there are any issues with the audio coming through. Hopefully not.
Welcome, Jared. Such a delight to have you with us today. As we know, AI is a topic that is, near and dear to a lot of the work that you've done. So I'd love it if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how the team at Maximus is using AI today.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me. My name is Jared Curtis. I'm the Senior Director of Corporate Communications here at Maximus. Within my purview, I have internal communications, social media, storytelling, and brand. We've been working with AI since the beginning of the year. We did a big study, probably mid-year around April, and discovered a lot of things that we didn't know about AI that we didn't know before. Some of the things like actually our audiences prefer human with partnering with AI content. That was overwhelmingly in every category. They scored that content higher. And then also with AI in general and content development, it improves the content quality, the reducing of word count, and also the just the way that the level of effort it takes to build some of the content that we do, it actually lowered that overall. So we learned a lot from that, and putting a lot of things in place from that study, and kind of sharing our knowledge with others in our profession so they can benefit from the same things that we did.
And Jared, in relation to the study, can you just tell us more about the AI pilot you ran? You mentioned using human and AI advances there. Can you just talk a little bit more about the pilot you ran?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we do internal communications and social media and thought leadership articles and things like that for storytelling. So the way that we kind of framed everything up, innovation is one of our values at Maximus. And so with that, we wanted to ensure that, with a certain amount of risk, there's always risk with entering into a new kind of tool or resource or field that we wanted to make sure it was mitigated risk. So we did a study, and part of that was ensuring that, we set a good framework in looking at AI and how it could benefit us, and really doing a fair judgment of the tool. So what we did was did a lot of research, looked at the risks, the ethics, the bias, and misinformation that can come with AI, but also its capabilities. It's a very powerful tool. So we did it in kind of two different paths. One being a content development study where we did 30 days of baseline content development with my staff. And then we did another 30 days with my staff, supplementing with AI in their content development. And we did it with, internal communications, our thought leadership, and all the things that I mentioned before. And then we also did a survey. So I have access to like almost 40,000 employees. And so we sent out a survey with 3 different topics, so one was timekeeping, one was on values, one was on another topic that escapes my mind at the moment. But then we broke down each topic into a human writing the content alone, the AI writing the content alone, and the human with AI. And out of that, we got about 6,000 responses, maybe more. And what we found out of that was the audiences really preferred human with AI content. They found it to be more understandable, more engaging. It was more concise. So what we learned from that and what we took away from that and evaluated that was, okay, so our audiences, my staff really found value in AI and how to partner effectively with that. So now it's a matter of how do we effectively put that in place for our staff to use and engage going forward. So that part didn't end there. We also had to put in our code of conduct. How are we going to effectively use AI in an ethical and responsible manner? What are some of those adoption principles that when we do put AI in place, that we're doing it in a repeatable manner, that we're partnering with our security team, our privacy team, all the other folks that have, are a stakeholder in the effective implementation of that. And so that way they're comfortable with our implementation. We are, and we're using it in a responsible way.
Like not only fascinating, but like hugely progressive from Maximus. So really interested to understand what made you take the approach to generative AI right now instead of taking a more wait and see how things go as a communicator.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, one of our values is innovation. And typically for me personally, I tend to be a first adopter. New fancy phone comes out, smartphone comes out. I've got to see it, touch it, use it. And that's always kind of been my thing. So, and that's one of the values that we really instill in our people here at Maximus is be innovative, try new things. But again, when you are doing those types of things, make sure that you're taking that risk in a very responsible way and you're mitigating that risk. And so, with taking that risk and being innovative, there's 2 things with it. You're either you're gonna benefit from it, or it's gonna fail and you learn something from it. So that's why I wanted to really kind of take that step and look to see where AI can go, because it is powerful. I mean, even just me personally dabbling in it before even bringing it to my staff was you can see the value of that very, very quickly. Even if you just have a sense of writer's block, you're just looking for ideas, it's that tool. So that was something that I really talked to my staff about is I want to try this, I want to take this risk, but let's make sure that if something were to happen, how do we pivot really quickly? And that's where, you know, we were very transparent with our audiences in that implementation of AI, that we just said, look, we're going to try this. And, you know, with every communication that we send out now, there's a transparency statement that says, hey, part of this communication may have been used with AI, and here's where all of our code of conduct is. Here's where our adoption principles are. If you find something in here, here's how you report it. You can report to us, you can report to ethics, you can report it to whomever you need to ensure that, you know, we're being held accountable for the content that we create, and our audiences have a pathway to give us that feedback.
Yeah, the transparency is really great, I think, and really interesting. I think, have you gotten much feedback from your readers in terms of, you know, appreciating that you've added that extra layer, or has anyone kind of reported anything to date that you found?
To date, no. So I think that goes to show that, you know, the safeguards and the toll gates that we kind of go through our review process are working. Now, is that going to be 100% foolproof? No. I mean, I'm realistic about that, but I think you would run into that with just someone on their own writing it as well, rather than, you know, it partnering with AI too. So that risk will always be there. But, you know, just from the survey that we did with our staff, we found that, again, they prefer the content with human with AI. So we just know that that's more engaging with them. So for me, I haven't seen anything from our staff. I think it's been very transparent to them as far as the content that we develop before and after that. I think it's just more engaging for them. We do communications audits every year, and from last year to this year, we haven't seen any degradation in any of the responses or the engagement that we've had from our audience before or after, and maybe even just a slight improvement.
That's great. And I think, you know, that adding those statements and developing your own principles, those things strike me as really good pieces of advice for other internal comms professionals who are maybe looking to build out their own programs. Are there other things that you've implemented or, you know, thought about at Maximus that you think would be really things you'd recommend to others to, you know, explore, implement as they're adding AI into their own programs?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is AI is just getting infused with every tool that people are running into anymore. You look at, so we use Grammarly as one of our grammar editing checking tools. That now has an AI tool built in. Microsoft is going to infuse Copilot, or has infused Copilot in their products. You just see this amplification of AI just being infused in everything. And so my feeling on it is, as a communicator in this profession, is as that becomes more prevalent, the more you resist, the further behind you're going to be. Just because there's just so much of it being out there, you have to have some level of understanding of AI. So I would encourage people to, you know, learn and research and understand what AI is and what it isn't, and establish some governance behind it. Because it's here and it's not going to go away. In fact, it's going to, in my opinion, accelerate. And so as communicators, this is a tool for us. You know, you look, you know, yeah, it's there for software engineers, for coding and some of the other things, but generative AI is for us. It's for communications and marketing. We're writers, and that's what it does. It generates words for us and content for us, and helps us be more effective in our profession. So within our organizations, I think we can be seen as leaders in the organizations to really offer up, you know, that that information and that thought leadership within the organization to say, hey, look, this is how we're using generative AI. Here's how it can benefit you all. And oh, by the way, here's how you can effectively and responsibly govern the AI for your business to ensure that we have those safeguards in place.
That's a really interesting perspective, Jared, as well. It's like it's for you. So one of the things we would have heard from customers is potential concern about IC roles or how that might change the IC roles and their function. What are your thoughts around job security or how that might impact IC roles?
Yeah, I think for where it stands today, and I have seen this in a couple different places, is think of AI as an intern. So your intern is fairly green to the profession. They're generating content for you that you have to go in and edit, but it gets you someplace. I'll give a good example, and take from it what you will, whether it is a tool that's going to. I don't think the tool is ever going to replace us, because it can't provide empathy. And so when you are creating communications, there is always that human connection that we as communicators need to ensure that's there. In fact, it's in our code of conduct, and I made sure it was there, that whatever AI generates, there will always be a human component in it, and we will always maintain that human connection. And I think that's key because, again, a computer cannot possess emotions or empathy, and that's something that we as just human beings bring to communications. But a good example, good use case, that I had a request from our HR recruiting team. Said, hey, we're having some problems with generating like rejection letters or letters for staff that says, hey, you applied for this position, you weren't selected for this reason, and we want to send them a letter that is more tailored to them, that says you didn't get. So one example is you didn't get accepted because you need more training. So you need more training, but here's where you can go, and this is what you can do for the next time you apply for a similar position, of the training you could take and how you can better yourself for the next application. So what would have taken probably at least a week or two to figure out like what are the top 10 or 15 reasons for rejection to a role, and then creating that letter for each one of those. You think about 15 like letters and reasons, that's a lot of time. I plugged into ChatGPT, what are the top 15 reasons for rejections for a job, listed them out, and I said, okay, write a letter for each one of them. It did that, and I did that within just a few minutes. Would have taken one of my staff members probably a few weeks to do. Is it final? No, but it's a start. So it got me to a place that would have taken me a longer time to get there in just a few minutes. Now I can take that and revise it and make it, pertinent to us. So is that a replacement of a person? No. But what it does is it allows me to be more, it frees up my time to be more thoughtful about that and make some edits in a faster period of time, turn that around to my recruiters so they can review. So it just allows me to, be more strategic and thoughtful about some of those where it would have taken a lot of time and energy to get to where I was in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I think that enhanced personalization is such a great use case for this type of technology, and it's an exciting one that when you think about AI making things sort of more or less human, really an opportunity to increase the humanity of that process with a little bit of assistance and time savings. I'm curious, are you finding your team is spending less time overall on content creation and generation and more time in other areas?
Yeah, I would say in fact, one of my managers came to me last week. We were working on some Veterans Day content, and she was struggling with some of the thoughts to put in. You just kind of get to that point in writer's block, right? And where you're just trying to get over that hump and like, I don't know really where to start or how I should word this. She just used, a generative AI to, get her over that hump and get to that point. So, again, it's powerful. And the level of effort it took her to get there was much shorter period of time than it would have been, her sitting there trying to figure out on her own. So the level of effort there lower. Now within social media, since that's very shorter content, the majority of the time, and that's one thing we found in our study, is that the level of effort actually increased slightly with social media. And the reason is, I went to my manager and said, hey, well, why is your level of effort actually higher using generative AI than it would be, just yourself? And she's like, well, a lot of times I have the idea in my head, I get it down on paper, and it's just quicker for me to do that rather than using, generative AI to build the prompt and the details and have it output, and then I got to go back and edit. And I said, that was fair. But what we found was, even though I had a little bit bigger, higher level of effort, the content output compared to human alone was actually higher. The engagement was actually higher. So again, you look at the audiences in the survey that we did, the engagement from our audiences, whether AI alone, that we would never do, and then human alone compared to human partnered with AI, the human partner with AI, it was higher in every category. So sometimes there's that trade-off, right? So you have the idea in your head, exactly what you want to do, you put it down on paper, but you got that human with AI that just adds for better or worse, it adds that better engagement and understandability and all the other factors with our audiences that just wasn't there before.
Jared, what are you using to measure the engagement?
So we built a survey. So we use SurveyMonkey to look at the engagement. Of course, then we've got other factors like our communications audit. We've got the details and the reporting through full transparency. We use Poppulo in our email communications. So we use that as well. And so there's a number of different data points that we look at to ensure that is our audience engaging with our content, and are they engaging it in the right way that we really want them to? So whether it be taking a call to action or sharing things online or with themselves. So it's then I'm rambling, but the other thing we have too is we have a global engagement survey every year that we send out to our employees, that we typically get about a 76% response rate. And a couple of those details and factors in there is the communications that they receive are meaningful. And usually that's about 85%, I think was the last one. So we have a lot of different factors that we measure.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, hugely important to be able to understand the impact and the engagement. I suppose with that, you spoke about the benefits to communications and marketing in particular. Do you think there's an opportunity for IC to really lead the charge in AI adoption, or what are your thoughts around IC being the driver for that?
Yeah, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier is, generative AI is for us. It's for communications and marketing. We're probably going to be the heaviest users of generative AI within the industry, just due to the nature of what we do. And so as generative AI starts making its way into organizations and the tools that we use, we have to be leaders in it. And I don't think there's any other way, because we're going to be the heaviest users of these tools. And I think, again, the more that, communicators resist the notion of it, and I get it, the questions about, is generative AI going to replace me? Is it going to, reduce staff, or all those questions? And I think they're good questions. I think there are questions that have to be asked, but but it doesn't mean that generative AI is not still going to evolve. It's still not going to be infused into tools. And so for us to have a meaningful conversation about it and show show the meaning of what we do and our profession, we have to have a really deep understanding of its capabilities and what it is and what it isn't. When people first start using AI, they think it's going to do all of these crazy things. But as they start to understand it, they understand what generative AI and what it is and what it isn't. And so at the end of that bell curve, it starts leveling off and you get to really understand the benefits and the detractors from it. So for us to to enter into the conversation within our organizations it might delay fears with your security and privacy teams. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle, right? Because the bias, the misinformation, all of those things that are in with AI, communicators just have to establish that framework and start and work with those teams to partner to ensure that when that AI, whether it be a tool that they're using or an add-on feature that to a tool that they're using today, that they're able to really talk in a meaningful way about the governance, the responsibility, and ethics that we as communicators do every day, even before AI, because that's just who we are. That's our profession. That's what we do, is ensure that the information that we're providing to our audiences is, free from bias, free from misinformation. That is just our profession. And with AI, that's no different. Our code of conduct and responsibility doesn't start and end with AI. It's always been there.
Great perspective. I think we probably have time just for one more question here, unfortunately, but obviously we're here today. We're curious what really excites you, or what are you looking forward to in using AI within Poppulo?
Yeah, just so happened, I believe it was Friday, we just got our beta version of the generative AI within feeds, played around with it, and it's interesting. So what I like about it is kind of what I mentioned before, right? Is the generative AI tool is there to enhance your communications. And sometimes, even with my own team, a good example is we tend to write in a very formal way, and sometimes it's hard to make that switch, because like my boss, the chief of human resources, she likes to talk in a very kind of casual, friendly way. And so someone that has worked in communications and has been more of a professional writing approach and tone sometimes has that hard switch into that friendly tone. And so with the beta version that we've seen within Poppulo, within feeds, it does provide the option to have it be a professional tone, a neutral tone, or a friendly tone. And just playing around with that, again, gives you a different perspective. And I like the way that it switches over to that casualness very easily. So you can now kind of switch your thought process into making that communication in the tone that you want it to be. Also, the other piece is the length. Sometimes we get a little verbose, and I talked earlier about how generative AI can improve conciseness, and that's what our audiences actually prefer. And so with your beta version as it stands today, is you are able to kind of change the length of the communication very easily through a drop down. And then I think the last piece was the title, gave you title suggestions. So it's funny, the way that we craft our communications for reviews, the last thing that we create is the title. And because people really struggle with that. They don't know, like, how am I going to title this to make it engaging? And again, I talk about level of effort, time spent on communications. again, the way that the titling done in there, you can just give you some options, just select them, then you can make some edits on that. So it's a way to speed up your content development process in a meaningful way to get you to the end result that you want to get to. So I'm excited to see where this is all going. And as I said, you know, as communicators, AI is getting infused with every tool that we use, and you know, Poppulo is no exception. I think you guys are starting to really get in there more and more, and you know, and so is everybody else. So as communicators, we just have to evolve and get to that place where, you know, we understand what it is and what it isn't, and get us to a good place with partnering with AI.
Super interesting stuff and great perspectives. Thanks again, Jared, for joining us. This was incredibly insightful.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have just a couple minutes left to hopefully address some top questions here, but I know we didn't leave a ton of time. So again, we'll be following up to answer all of your questions after the webinar, but hopefully enjoyed that conversation with Jared. I know we certainly did. Let's see. Katrina, looking through the Q&A at all?
There's a couple I can jump straight into. Heather, there was a question around when would those features be deployed. So anything I demo today, the assist content generation features on our feeds UI and the content insight themes, they're all available in Poppulo for feeds today. Follow-up question to that, when will similar capabilities be available on the email side of our product? We're working on that right now. So 2024, some really exciting things coming to email. And we would plan to release those incrementally, so hopefully bring value early in 24 and phase those out throughout 2024.
Great. Let's see. Trying to find a good question here. Seeing one around, or Katrina, do you have one top of mind?
No, there was just one around, I kind of explained we're not storing any data on the Poppulo side in our service. There was a similar question, does Microsoft? So no, Microsoft is always OpenAI. They don't store any customer information for, again, training purposes for models. I suppose that was, again, one of the drivers why we would have chosen that service for development. Their security documentation is available publicly as well. So there's lots of information on FAQs from OpenAI.
Yeah. I'm seeing a question on whether Poppulo AI is a subscription app and how much it is in other terms and conditions. So we're building Poppulo AI into our platform. So that is how it works today. But if you're curious about, you know, more detail on things like terms and conditions, we can send, you know, reach out to your CSM, or if you're not a Poppulo customer today, that's something that, you know, I'd be happy to provide some additional detail on if you want to reach out. I know we have one final poll here as well, if we haven't popped that up yet. Okay. So just if you are interested in more information, or for a Poppulo representative to follow up with you to get a demo of Poppulo AI or have a deeper conversation yourself, you can just let us know on that poll there as well. Maybe just one final question. I think there's a good one that just popped up in the chat, but would you discourage the use of multiple AI tools in a communicator's line of work? Certainly would be really interested in the audience's perspective on that question as well. I think, you know, there's definitely some benefit to standardizing your AI tools across your communications network. Really just that helps ensure that kind of consistency, but there's, you know, a lot of really great options to explore as well. So I guess, you know, maybe looking at what would be really the most useful for you to help address those key use cases, but ideally standardizing a few, both hopefully to keep subscription costs down, but also to create that consistency of tone and language and all of that great stuff. Well, I know we're at time, so thank you so much again for joining us today. Again, we'll be sending the recording out afterward and reaching out for any of those questions we didn't have time for today. But thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.